Hello, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple questions about this new project. What's the name of your project?
The project's name is CC-VISAGES. CC-VISAGES is a French-English acronym standing for Climate Change, Vulnerability Inferred Through Social Analysis, Geography and Environmental Systems.
What made you want to do a project on climate change, did you just say?
Yeah. Climate change is one of the most urgent matters in our times, in particular the mitigation of climate change, and the project addresses climate change in a new way. Climate change basically is understood as temperature rise or flooding or like hurricanes, El Niños. The project assumes that climate change is framed differently by different communities depending by this particular situation in which people are. They frame that what they call climate change according to their particular problem set.
And what new things do you think that you're bringing to the table about climate change that hasn't already been discovered or talked about?
The project's assumption is that climate change policy making fails because the understanding of the different concepts is not considered in the policy making process. Therefore, the project bases on the idea of comparing three different countries in terms of geographic and political orientation. So we have chosen to use Germany, Canada and Brazil as cases to look for that what is understood by the concept of climate change on the community level in these three countries.
How do you think this new understanding of climate change will affect today?
Well, the project actually did for the first time look for vulnerability indicators on the community level in all the three countries. So we have created maps of vulnerability considering social indicators like income or gender or migration or non-white people background, among others like education and so on, as vulnerable indicators that we now can compare in order to frame the mindset in which climate change appears to communities. The second thing what we are doing is that a new method has been created which can be used to identify the different understandings of a concept and then test the possibility to find a consensus definition of the climate change concept. With help of this method, we hope not only to reveal the differences and the possibility of consensus, but also help to understand or help the policy-making process to properly address the problem by good governance, good climate governance. So this has not been done before like this.
Oh, okay. Can you explain in more detail
the Brazilian government sees climate change as a development issue. They have no problem with the natural resources. They want to extract them to develop. Whereas Germany has no resources. Mm-hmm. Germany wants the government to save the rainforest for carbon trade, mitigating the impacts from CO2 emissions. Because of this, these two governments don't speak about the same thing. They speak about different concepts. And if we can identify the differences as part of the policy-making process, in that case, we can really say something about what has to be done. Like if Brazil would get what Brazil wants in terms of what it understands is part of the climate change process, and the German government would get it, and the Canadian government would get it, then we would come close to a solution where everyone would say okay, we can do that. Example is binding agreements. We say CO2 emissions must be reduced. for Brazil and Canada, this is actually not a question, not interesting for them. Why would they? They have a lot of forest. Germany, on the other side, produces, as Canada and as Brazil, a lot of emissions, but does not cover a lot because we don't have a lot of forests. So what would be the interest of these other countries to engage? There is no interest, because Germany is just saying we must save the planet, and Brazil says we want to develop, and Canada says we want to continue as we did. And when we can identify what are like the discourses, the perceptions, the definitions behind these arguments, when we can define this and look for the differences and then test the possibility of consensus, then we would have a tool and we would have results which help to find a compromise. This is what the project is actually about.
Finding a solution.
Yeah. And therefore the idea is that in every country will be done research in communities, considering like the social structure of the community, the exposure to temperature and climate change impacts, because that what I've explained on the macro level is also true for the community. Like I come from Berlin, you come from Florida. When we speak about climate change, I think we have different priorities. Berlin has no problem with increasing sea level because we have no coast. So when Florida would speak about like coast protection, for Berlin it would be just irrelevant. And this is the point where I think if we can identify this, then we can come to a solution. And there is a hypothesis and a basic idea. What I found in the literature is that climate change is defined by 4 main frames. And one is like that climate change policy making in terms of like we must reduce CO2 emissions, like the German perception. And one is development and climate change, like the Brazilian perception. One is migration and climate change, more a European perspective. And one is security and climate change. And this is more maybe the Canadian perspective. But if we go down to the communities, we will see from one community to the other, one or more of these aspects is predominant in that what they discuss as climate change. And we need to identify this, and with a project over the next 4 years, we want to reveal this on the community level and on the provincial level and on the national level, and also compare the 3 national climate change policies.
Well, sounds like a good project. Thank you, the Mickala Show. Next week.
Okay, we are on record.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will cut it anyway in a proper way. So, okay. Okay. Try to repeat. What is my project about?
Climate change.
Yeah, it's true. It's about climate change.
Uh,
Come on.
Okay.